I'm going to go ahead and share the screen at the moment so that everybody can, let me make sure that I share the right screen. Okay, can everybody see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes, we're good, Julie.
Perfect, perfect. All right, I promise it won't be that boring. I am my background. I'm going to give you just a snapshot of who I am and what I do. I started diving into. I'm a neuroscience geek or brain geek, if you will, about 22 years ago when I was studying in the field of natural health. And I studied a course. One of the required courses was on psychoneuroimmunology, and that's a big, long, fancy word that just helps us to understand how our thought process, what we're thinking in our mind, affects our chemistry in our brain, and then in turn affects our immune system. And what this did is it just opened my mind to understanding what science can help us to see about what's going on in our brain and how that's affecting us personally, right? And it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I just started diving into everything neuroscience. And what I discovered was that so much of what is coded in our DNA creates who we are. And that is this beautiful combination of not just that DNA code, but also all of our life experiences. And when I learned that a lot of the things that we attribute to a lot of our natural gifts, they come from that DNA wiring. But sometimes we don't own them. Sometimes we don't step into them. Maybe we've been shamed. Maybe there have been different things that have affected us, and that pushes us away from us. So once I understood all this information, I was like, I gotta share. And me being an extroverted auditory female brain, it came easy to talk about it. So that's why I'm here with you today. Over the years, I've evolved into doing corporate presentations and helping leaders to really help develop not only their own natural gifts, their own skill sets, but also inspire and empower those that they are leading and that they are working with. And that's my hope of what I want to do with you today is I want to give you just a little snapshot of what I call the brain personality connection. We'll talk about more of that in a minute, why it's so important to do that, and then how can you utilize this in the projects that you're going to be working on in the next couple of days, as well as moving forward for the rest of your life. Are we good? Okay, I want everyone to start with, I want you to engage your brain. So I want you to just roll your shoulders back, and I want you to take a deep inhale through your nose and exhale through your nose. Okay, so inhale, exhale. Do it one more time for me. Inhale, exhale. Now note that I told you to exhale through your nose. That's because this is not a relaxation exercise. This is a brain engaging exercise, and we want to engage your brain. So whenever you want to engage your brain and activate portions of your brain, do your deep breathing exercises. However, do it exhaling through your nose, not through your mouth, because that's going to engage your brain in a better way. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to it. Let's talk about how your brain is uniquely wired with your natural gifts. Okay, understand this is it's coded in your DNA. Not everything in your life is learned behavior. A great portion of it is this beautiful code that tells your brain how to develop, how to wire, what's easy for it, what's not easy for it. And this makes up the wonderful person that you are. And it's so important to work connected to that DNA code as opposed to fighting against it. One of the neuroscientists that I follow that I absolutely love, I've read quite a bit of his writings, is John Ratey. And he says this, he says, a better understanding of how the brain works is going to give you a better way to get a handle on who we are. So understanding that chemistry in the brain, the all of the different firings between the neurons, the different neural transmitters, all of this is going to help you to understand why you do what you do the way that you do it, and then how to maximize those natural gifts. This is what I call the brain personality connection. Now, some of you have probably taken personality assessments. There's lots of personality assessments out there. There is Myers-Briggs. If you've done college entrance exams, a lot of times they'll do a Myers-Briggs or a DISC profiling system. We have created at Your Best Mind, we've created this very complex personality assessing tool. And it's because we're connecting the neuroscience and the neuropsychology. So it gives you a much better peer into your brain and into your natural gifts. And when you understand this, it gives you the ability to proudly own what you have naturally been given, because we don't always do that. We'll get into that just a little bit as we go further. Now, to help you understand why I say these are your natural gifts, these are things that are easier for your brain to do. Dr. Richard Heyer, he did a lot of his work out here in California out of Stanford University. He said that according to his research, his PET scans, his fMRI scans, he discovered that people were able to do things easier, literally burn less oxygen, less glucose, less micronutrition, to process cognitive thoughts out of certain quadrants of their brain. So that's your home, right? That's the area that is naturally gifted to you in your DNA code. To help you understand this, I want everybody to do an exercise with me. So if you're holding a pen or a paper or a phone or whatever, set it down. And I want you all to fold your hands like you see it in this one picture here. Fold them so that you have your fingers intertwined. Now, some of you are going to have the left thumb on top like me. How many? Go ahead, raise or put in the chat. How many have the left thumb on top? All right. Those of you who have the left thumb on top, you're good to go. If you have your right thumb on top, we might want to set up an appointment and talk later. No, I'm just teasing. I'm teasing. There's no difference between the two. One isn't better than the other or superior than the other. It's just the way your brain told your hands to fold. Now what I want you to do is I want you to kind of flatten your hands and intertwine your fingers just the opposite. How does that feel? And by the way, as we're doing this, interact in the Zoom chat as much as you want. I'm going to see if I can open that up. Just interact as much as you want. Put your things in there. How does that feel? Your thoughts in there. Is it comfortable to do it just the opposite? Another way to do it is fold your arms. Some will have the left arm on top like me. Some will have the right arm on top. Again, no, I had the right arm on top. Sorry. Again, no difference between the two in terms of intellect. It's just the way your brain told your arms to fold. Now what I want you to do is I want you to try to do it just the opposite. How does that feel? Is it comfortable? Most likely not. Some people have a very difficult time doing it. I see arms flying all over the place in audiences when I do this. It's because it's not natural. It's not the way your brain is telling your hand to automatically do it. See, when you do it automatically, it takes almost no energy. You don't think about it. You don't think, oh, okay, I'm folding my hands and my left thumb is on top and then I have my right thumb and then my left, right? You don't think, you just do it. But in order for you to do it the opposite, you have to think about it and understand that every single thought takes oxygen, glucose, and micronutrition. So you want to build your life, you want to build your pursuits around the skills that you naturally have, so you're not burning much energy. So it comes easy to you. All right. We're going to talk about this morning. We're going to jump in and we're going to talk about the brain personality connection. We're going to talk about 2 of the 5 factors. The first one is introversion, extroversion level. That's one of the ones we're going to talk about because under the blanket of what you're going to be doing in the next couple of days, working in teams, you might be in teams where you're an introvert and they're an extrovert, or you're the extrovert and you're dealing with an introvert. You need to understand the wiring of the brain of these individuals so you understand how to better interact with them and honoring each other's natural gifts. Another is the brain gender. We're not going to cover that one. Communication, sensory, style, preference. We're not going to cover that one. But we are going to cover the brain quadrant dominance, the 4th one in this list. This is which area of your cerebrum, which of the 4 main quadrants are you spending the least amount of energy? How does that relate into your personality and into your natural gifts? And then how do you connect with or link to the other people who maybe have a completely different personality than you or brain quadrant dominance in you? The last one is nurture. I'm going to barely touch on that just a little bit, but let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's talk about the introversion extroversion difference in the brain. Now understand this is set in the reticular activating system in the brain. It is wired to your DNA code. Now, there will be things throughout your life that may cause you to draw more inward. If you're in a lot of stress, your brain, your amygdala will kick in and will automatically draw you inward. But that's not what we're going to really focus on, that portion of it. We're just going to focus on what there are people who are naturally coded, their brain is naturally coded to be an introvert. Now, this doesn't mean that you're shy. As a matter of fact, one of the most outspoken individuals I know is an introvert. She wouldn't stand up in front of an audience and tell you her opinion, but one-to-one, she's going to let you know exactly how she feels. So there's a big difference between being shy and being an introvert. Being shy has much more to do with your self-esteem, your issues, your self-perception. Whereas being introverted simply means that you are your internal processor. It means that out of the hours of the day, because your brain is so naturally stimulated, it doesn't need any extra external stimulation. It doesn't need a bunch of stuff going on out here in the environment to keep it wide awake, because it's naturally wide awake. As a matter of fact, too much stuff going on out here is going to overwhelm the introvert's brain and cause them to shut down even more. So it's real important to understand this about the introverts. Now, you have about 30% of the population that are in this introvert, extreme to moderate introvert scale. And they prefer to spend most of their time in very low stimulus environments because their brain is naturally stimulated. Kind of picture it this way. It's like the introvert takes pictures of life every day with a huge wide angle lens. So they only need to take 1 or 2 pictures. And then they can spend the rest of their time identifying all of the things in that picture that they took. This makes sense? Now, the extrovert, they're just the opposite. Their brain is actually naturally very, very sleepy. It's very tired. So it is constantly looking for external stimulation to keep it awake. My brother-in-law, we lost him a few years ago, sadly, but he was an extreme extrovert. And I am not joking with you when I tell you, years ago, when he would come date my sister and he would come into the house and he would sit down, and if you did not openly engage with him in a conversation or play a game or whatever, within 5 minutes, the man would fall asleep sitting up. Like, you would literally hear him snoring within 5 minutes. It was the funniest thing to watch. At the time, I didn't understand what was going on. Now I do. I know that his brain, he was a naturally extroverted individual. And if we weren't providing him with enough stimulus, then he was not staying awake and his brain was not engaged. Picture the extrovert instead. So the introvert takes these big pictures, these big snapshots, these big camera shots of the world. The extrovert takes little tiny telephoto shots. So they have to run around just taking little snapshots all the time in order to keep their brain awake. They have to constantly feed information in order to keep their brain happy. That's the extrovert. So as you're interacting in your groups over the next couple of days, think about that. How can I, if I'm the extrovert, how can I honor the introvert? If I'm an introvert, how can I honor be understanding of the extrovert? And I'm going to give you a couple of tips on that. Before I move to that, though, I want to talk about the ambiverts. There's not a lot of people. How many of you know what an ambivert is? You can type yes, no, whatever in the chat if you want. The ambivert is not something that a lot of people talk about very much. Everybody focuses on the two extremes. But the ambivert is like a chameleon. They can float into either extreme depending on what they're doing throughout the day, depending on what's going on in their life. And really, a larger portion of the population, about 40% of the population, are ambiverts. I mean, what this means is that sometimes they can act like an introvert. Sometimes they want their alone time. They want their quiet time. They don't want to be around people or high stimulus. And other times they're just the opposite. They want the high stimulus. They want to go out to the amusement park and they want to spend all the day with a lot of things going on. The key is that they kind of, if you look at hours in the day, the introvert wants most of them alone. The extrovert wants most of them engaging with other people or other sources of stimulus. And the ambivert's about 50-50, right? They want about half of it. They can do both, but they can't do both day after day. They can't be at the amusement park every day of their life. They can't be alone every day of their life. So that's the ambivert. So you might fall into that category. But moving out of this, I want you to keep this in mind when you're interacting in these groups, when you're talking to and asking for input from other people. If you have an introvert in your group, you have to honor what their brain needs in order to honor their natural brain gifts. And you never want to shame them for it. And if you are the introvert, you want to understand why you do things the way that you do and let people know that. So be wary of being late. The introverts do not like that. Introverts, the unknown causes anxiety for the introvert. So if you're late, it's causing them anxiety because they don't know what's going on, right? Give them their personal space. It's very interesting in psychological studies. They've watched introverts and extroverts, and introverts have a very large personal space. Extroverts have a very small personal space. Now, since all of this is virtual, we don't have to worry about this so much, but going forward, when we get back into interacting with people and we can get closer than the 6-foot social distancing, keep this in mind, right? Be cautious of pushing them. And this is going to be really key in moving forward into your groups. Be cautious of pushing an introvert for an answer right now. When you're asking them, well, what do you think about this? Remember, they're internal processors. So they're going to be thinking internally. And if you push them and say, well, come on, answer me. It's going to cause them anxiety, which is going to draw them even more inward. And it's going to do that whole amygdala take over, hijack the thinking portion of the brain. We're going to talk about that in a couple minutes. And it's going to shut them down. So just be cautious about pushing them for an audible answer. All right. Allow them time to process because they're those internal processors, and be careful not to overwhelm them with too much stimulus. Okay. That's really crucial. Now, for the extrovert, it's really just the opposite. You kind of have to be understanding of all of the extra energy that the extrovert tends to have. You need to understand and accept and actually encourage their enthusiasm. And sometimes that means letting them go first all the time. When it comes to sharing the thoughts, it might mean, hey, I'm the introvert, so you go ahead. You share your thoughts first. That's all right. That's going to give me time to internally process as an introvert, which I'm not an introvert. I'm just saying this might go on the mind of an introvert. And then I can kick out the answer. Extroverts are very external thinkers as well as, they're that external processor, right? So they're going to talk things out. They're going to, well, if we do things this way, then this is going to be the result. So if we tweak it like this, then we'll have a different result, but this result's going to be better than this result. So they may tend to do that. Allow them that external processing and be understanding that when they're doing that, they're not necessarily questioning what you just said. They're just processing what you just said, and they're doing it in an external fashion. So be understanding of that. Keep that conversation moving, keep the ideas and the thoughts moving to keep their brains engaged, because the extroverts are going to have a really hard time if there's too much quiet in the room. Their brain's going to shut off, or they're going to start, looking at their phone or petting a dog or whatever's going on. They're going to find another way to stimulate their brain. And they're going to have a lot of extra energy. You may not notice that so much in a virtual setting. It may be something that's more apparent when you're one-to-one, but they're going to have this extra energy. So you kind of have to be understanding of that. Okay, how you feel? A lot of information in the first 20 minutes, right? A lot there. So let's give your brain a break. Let's do a brain game. I'm going to talk about brain games later. This is a great way to re-energize your brain. Allow all the information that I just threw at you to kind of settle down in the lower portions of your brain. Let your hippocampus process it. And we're going to mix it up, and we're going to do a brain game. So let's see. I don't know how to best do this. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds, 30 seconds to count how many squares there are. Let me see if I can pull up a chat. I don't know. I do not know if I can pull up a chat in this. I don't think I can while I'm sharing. So go ahead and put in there what you think, how many squares you think are in the box.
And I can read it out loud for you if you'd like.
Oh, okay, what do we have coming up? What's popping up?
27, 16, 30, 30, 26.
Okay. How about 30? A lot of people, let's go real quick, go through these. You have the obvious first 16. Then you have 17, the big one on the outside.
Yes,
Then you have,
Fishery said 30.
oh, somebody said 30.
Yes,
Awesome.
somebody did.
Awesome. Very good. So they caught these squares of 4.
Right.
And then you've got the center squares of 4. You have a center square of 4 in here. Then you have squares of 9. Right? See them here? Isn't that fun?
Absolutely.
It's fun to do these kinds of things. And we're going to talk about brain games in just a minute when we talk about how to keep your brain engaged moving forward. So think about different ones that you can get the calendar, your brain a day calendar, those types of things are really fun. Just keep your brain refreshed, especially if you're stuck. Okay, let's keep moving on. Let's talk about your brain quadrant dominance. All right, this is really when we focus on and we really think about that, how we folded our hands, right? And what takes more energy and what takes less energy. This is the quote from Dr. Richard Heyer that I talked about earlier. He said, most brains are believed to have an innate energy expenditure advantage in one of the 4, not all of the 4, one of the 4 cerebral divisions. You have natural divisions, you have natural fissures in your brain. So you've got 2 quadrants on the left, 2 quadrants on the right. In these divisions, or in that one quadrant, according to Dr. Richard Heyer, the brain uses less oxygen, glucose, and micronutrition and needs a shorter recovery time when performing tasks that draw heavily on that area. So you have a home. You have a quadrant. That's your natural gift. And it's so important that you own that. Because if you don't own that, if you don't embrace that and bring that out into the world, number one, you're not sharing the best of you. You're holding back beautiful things that you can do. And number 2, you're spending your entire life folding your hands the opposite way. You're spending your entire life spending extra energy because while you have one quadrant that you spend up to 1/100th the amount of energy in, you also have a quadrant that's the diagonally opposite quadrant that you spend up to 100 times more energy to process out of. So if you're concealing and you're hiding those natural gifts, you're spending all of this extra energy day after day after day. So you're not only robbing yourself of all the enjoyment, robbing the world of your beautiful gifts, you're also damaging your health, which we'll touch on that towards the end. So let's just jump into this. We're going to talk about those 4 quadrants, and then we're going to do a really fun assessment. You know what? If I turn down, well, no, I don't want to do that. Never mind. Okay, the first quadrant, front left, anterior left. So right here, front left. These are some of the characteristics that are of what I call the boss BQD. Because understand that if at any point in time, any of us are doing logical, inductive, deductive reasoning, facts out, in, facts out, just kind of like a computer, facts in, facts out. We are using this section of our brain. So if this is where you fold your hands, if this is where you spend 1/100th the amount of energy, this is your gift. It is your gift and you need to embrace it as such. This is where we delegate authority. In other words, this is where we tell people what to do. If I'm giving you instruction or Julia's giving you instruction, we are activating primarily, not that other parts of the cerebrum don't engage as well, but primarily we're engaging this front left section of our brain. So those who spend 1/100th the amount of energy here, it's their gift. They're gifted at delegating authority. They're gifting at taking charge, at organizing things in a fashion and giving tasks to different people. They're gifted at fact-based problem solving. Again, facts in, facts out. And when you're making a fact-based decision, you are heavily using this quadrant of your brain. So individuals who are gifted here naturally, automatically, they just make decisions with ease. Where do you want to go for dinner? Let's go here, right? They just do it automatically. Or they're the ones that go into an amusement park and say, let's do this, this, and this, and we're going to follow this, this, and this. All right? They're the ones that take charge. Now I give them, to help the brain remember, I give them the red triangle. Red because red is a very strong color. It, in the subconscious, it raises very strong emotions. And red, this particular brain quadrant dominance tends to be one of the strongest personalities, the kind of in your face personalities. I give them the triangle because the shape of the triangle, because sometimes their personalities can be a little bit prickly. I'm going to tell you a story about me and my sister. So I'm one of 5 daughters, no brothers, one of 5 daughters. I'm right in the middle, but in terms of birth order, I really was the baby because there's 11 years between me and my younger sister, another whole section under nurture. But anyways, I was out shopping with the sister directly older than me, the second born in the family. And she is very much the boss, very much the boss. Now we had sat down, we were sitting down having lunch in the mall. Obviously this was a while ago. We weren't doing this during quarantine, right? This was several years ago. We sit down and we go, oh man, you know, those clothes. And we were talking about the clothing styles and how everything that was really new and hot and the latest style, it was pretty much like what we wore in the late 80s or in the mid 80s, right? So I said to my sister, you know what, if I would just lose 50 pounds, I could pull all those clothes out that I have stored under my bed. I would have a completely new wardrobe, wouldn't have to spend a penny, and no one would be the wiser, and I'd be totally in style. My red triangle boss sister looks straight at me and she says, Julie, get rid of the clothes. You're never going to lose the weight. Well, you can just imagine. I almost went for her jugular. And it's a really good thing I understood the brain quadrant dominance information, because it saved her from a trip to the ER and me from a trip to jail, right? Because I instantly knew my thinking brain took over my emotional brain and said, let it go. She's just a boss. Facts in, facts out. I have had 3 children since 1985. One of those children was a moose. He was 9 pounds, 12 ounces, 22.5 inches long. Now, some of you may not understand that because of what age span, but those of you who understand sizes of children, that was a big baby. So these hips are never going to be back to my pre-childbirth hip size. It's just a fact. And that's all my sister was saying. Just facts in, facts out. That is a quintessential story of what a boss does and how a boss processes. So when you get the bosses in your groups, understand you're going to have, if you have a boss, if you have somebody taking charge, if you have someone being very fact-based, they're probably a boss. And it's okay. That's the way their brain processes it. And I'm going to give you some clues on how to interact with them a little bit better in a minute. So now we're going to talk about the back left. This is the posterior left quadrant of the brain. And I call this the master coordinator brain quadrant. And that's because this is where all of the coordinating, all of the organizing, all of the sequencing, all of that takes place in your brain. It takes place in that back left portion of the brain. So this is where spelling is housed. CAT spells cat. It's a sequence of 3 letters. It doesn't matter how it sounds or if it's phonetically, you know, it can be there THER or there THERER. You get my point, right? It doesn't matter. It's not emotional. It's just facts, sequenced, and filed. And that's what this portion of the brain does. This is where time and money are tracked. So these individuals are gifted at doing those types of things, at organizing, at being on time, at being practical, at performing the sequential tasks. If you wind up with a master coordinator in your group, they're probably going to be the ones that are going to take just very copious notes, and they're going to keep track of everything, and they're going to be watching the clock, and they're going to be right. That's a master coordinator, because that's where their gifts are at. Very dependable and practical individuals. Now I give them the blue square, the square shape, because everything is very organized and in its proper place in its little box. And the blue, because subconsciously blue is a very trusting color. You trust blue. Blue gives you a dependability. Blue calms you. Blue reduces your heart rate. Studies have shown that it actually reduces your appetite. So it lowers your blood pressure. So that's the blue. They're just going to keep everything organized for you. That's the master coordinator. Now, if we jump to the right side of the brain, something that I want to really point out about the right side of the brain that's very noteworthy is that the right hemisphere of the brain has many more neural connections down to the limbic system in the brain. And the limbic system is the home of emotion. So right brainers are naturally more connected to their emotions. They're going to think about emotional things more. They're going to display emotion on a deeper level, or display emotion more. They're going to feel emotion on a deeper level. So they're just automatically, and that is structurally coded in their DNA because they're more connected to the emotion center in their brain. If you go to the front right section of the brain, this is the innovator brain quadrant. Now you guys are going to be taxing into this. You're going to be tapping, I should say, into this quite a bit over the next couple of days, because this is where you're thinking, this is where all of your out of the box thinking takes place, right? Here's the logic of the left brain. Here's the way things are. Here's the challenges that we have, right? How do we think outside of the box? How do we work with this problem? How do we fix this problem? How do we come up with creative ideas to make this situation a better situation? Because chances are we might be in this situation for another year. So how do we do that? You're going to use your front right a lot. This is where all of the visionary thinking takes place in your brain. This is the portion of the brain that you're using heavily when you're thinking about the way things can be, the possibilities, the potentials, not what's happening now. Very rarely what's going on back there, unless they're using this information to create something new out here. They're always thinking forward. They're energized by innovation, exploring, brainstorming, creative problem solving. So remember I said that the fact-based problem solving was the boss. That's done on the logical left side of the brain when you have all of the facts listed out, facts in, facts out. Whereas here is if you don't have all the pieces to the problem or pieces to the puzzle. Again, something you're going to be using a lot of, right? You have to come up, you have to create these, come up and visualize these extra little pieces of the puzzle that you're not that aren't there. That's what the anterior right, the innovator, is very gifted in. They see the big picture, not the minute details. Now here's where you get some of these diagonal challenges. So here, this front right portion of the brains, where it's a big picture, all of the details are back here. This is the most difficult section of the brain for the innovator to access as the master control, or the master coordinator, and vice versa. The master coordinator it's 100 times as difficult for them to come up here and think in terms of energy expenditure in the brain for them to use the anterior right or the innovator section of the brain. So think about that. These are going to be the personalities that you're going to have the most challenges with, are those that are in the diagonally opposite brain gifts. Not bad. It's just they're the ones that your brain's going to have the hardest time understanding. But take this information with you throughout your life, because this is going to help you to understand them. Just like it helped me to understand my sister, because I'm the innovator, she's the boss. Another very interesting thing about the innovator brain quadrant dominance, or the front right section of the brain, is that this is the home of entrepreneurialism. It's also the home of sarcasm. So individuals that might have a little bit of a sarcastic sense of humor, this is probably their home. Okay, I've given them the purple triangle, or the purple imagination bubble, because they can see things that aren't there. They're very imagination. They're very thinking in their head. And think about, combine your introverts with this. If you have an introverted innovator, man, they're always in their brain coming up with creative ideas, because they're that internal thinker. And the extrovert is always talking about those ideas, right? They're always talking about the things that they're visualizing. That is, and I give it purple because purple's kind of in the subconscious, is kind of a mystical, magical number. And this is where all of that is explored in the brain. So that's why I gave him purple. Let's go to the last of the four, and then we're going to take a quick little assessment and find out what you are. Okay. This is the posterior left. This is the nurturer brain quadrant dominance. So when you are doing any type of emotional connecting of anything, decorating your house with a feng shui flow, you're utilizing this section of the brain. When you are connecting to nature, right? When you're hugging that tree, you're using this section of the brain. So for individuals that spend 1/100th the amount of energy to work here, This is their home. It naturally flows into their personality. It's their strength. It's their gift. And if you are here, it is your strength and your gift, and I want you to own it. They're all about peacekeeping, harmony. This is the home of music, is housed in the back left portion of the brain. Depending on the amount of musical training that you have received throughout your lifetime, you're going to use multiple sections of your brain. But the home of actual music, if music starts to play, this is the primary quadrant that lights up, is that back right. So individuals who spend 1/100th the amount of energy to work here, guess what? They are natural. They're the ones that can pick up an instrument and start playing it, figure out how to play it without having any professional training. They're the ones that can listen to a piece of music and play it on a instrument without ever looking at the notes, because their brain is naturally gifted in harmony. And they're going to put that harmony in everything. They're going to connect the dots to everything. They're very sentimental. Their memory is based. Remember, the fact-based memory, the fact-based details are all on the left back side. Well, all of the emotional details are here on the right side, where it connects down into the hippocampus. In problem solving, they're always going to take that emotional view. So again, diagonally opposite. So think about this as you look at this picture. The most challenging personality for the nurturer to have to deal with is going to be the boss, and vice versa. So if you are in a group and you are a nurturer and you are with a boss, you've got to think about this. And if you are a boss and you're with a nurturer, you're going to have to understand that they're going to always probably take that emotional view. And that's okay. You want all of these views. This is so important in any kind of brainstorming or problem solving, is you want the entire brain engaged. So if you can have somebody from all of these different brain quadrants, strengths and gifts in your group, you're gonna achieve a lot. Now I give them the green circle because green is a very, again, it's a very nature-based color, right? Our brain oftentimes thinks of nature. It is a circle because every single thing for the nurturer is connected. So everything's connected in that circle or in that sphere for the nurturer. Okay, so you got it. Do you have a kind of a little nutshell of what this looks like, the 4 main brain quadrants? Let's take, we're going to look at a couple of cartoons. Let's bring in a little bit of humor at the moment. I love using cartoons to kind of drive the point home. So here we have the 2 individuals, and the quote says, "So while you were sleeping, I talked to the doctors and they worked it out so that you can still keep building the deck when you get home." So what do you think the probable brain quadrant dominance is of the wife? You can put it in the chat if you want. Any guesses? It's the boss. Facts in, facts out. She's not looking at the fact that her husband is, or her significant other here, is injured. She just wants the deck done. She just wants the project finished. She's in charge. All right, the boss.
People are saying purple, green, boss.
Yeah, the boss. Okay, what about this one? Take a look at this one. Now, a lot of you on the call may be a little too young to remember this, but back in the day when you had to give all of the details, although I don't know, maybe they're still doing this on applications. It just seems to be much different now. But she is the financial aid advisor here at whatever company Ethel is. And she says, we need to know your parents' income, your expected summer earnings, your total earnings since the age of 2, the average income of all of your first cousins, your father's barber's total assets, 17 forms of ID, 131 personal references. What brain quadrant dominance do you think Ethel is? Any guesses?
Blue square, purple.
Blue square.
Purple.
Oh, we get.
Just ask Google now.
Yeah, just ask Google. They're not going to tell you.
Triangle. That's what people are saying in the chat. Square. Triangle. Mo goes with triangle. Coordination. I think that's it, Julie. Did we lose you? Oops. Let's give her a chance to get back. But she's fun. She's awesome.
The PowerPoint to where I want to be. And then you just tell me when you want it, when you want me to share the screen.
You can screen share.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're back. I am so sorry about that. I'm just all into talking and sharing information, and all of a sudden, all my screens go dark, all my lights go out, totally and completely lost power. So my apologies for that. Hopefully you've had fun with that little assessment. I did send the deck. I did send this deck because we're going to skip, because we took out a chunk of time there. I'm going to skip through a few of these, but you do have the PowerPoint deck, and by all means use it. If you have questions about it, I'm going to give my contact information at the end. Email me and we'll chat. I want you to be able to get the pieces on psychoneuroimmunology that I wanted to share. But I really want to wrap it up with inspiring you, wanting you to really own those natural gifts. There's all kinds of things in life that will cause you to hide those. If you're an extrovert and you're being told to be quiet, or you're told that you talk too much, you're going to hide that. If you're an introvert and you're going to be criticized because you don't jump in the middle of things, or you're not part of the team, you're going to try to adapt, and that's not healthy for your brain. Now, I heard that a lot of you were coming out as purple imagination bubbles, which is exactly what I would expect with this type of a group. When I speak for corporate CEOs, I normally have a bunch of red triangles, right? But when we're talking about innovation, this type of a challenge is going to draw a lot of innovators. So you're going to have to pay attention to, when you're in there doing your work, that somebody's got to write down the details to track what you're doing. But I want you to embrace those. A lot of times innovators get criticized because they are constantly in their head. They are constantly imagining. They are constantly looking forward and not necessarily staying here. They're daydreaming too much. I want you to own those. And I don't want you to let what other people tell you hold you back. Because quite frankly, if you embrace your gifts, if you own your gifts, if you step into that power, you can accomplish incredible things. And that's why I have the slide up in front of you that I have right now. I want you to meet a man named Daniel Kish. Daniel Kish was born shortly after he was born, it was discovered that he had cancer in his eyes. So at 13 months, barely had started walking. At 13 months, they literally had to remove his eyes. He is completely blind. And yes, this is him riding a mountain bike. He rides mountain bikes all over some of the most treacherous trails. I mean, I would take a mountain bike down my driveway and fall over. This man takes incredibly challenging trails, and he survives them. Not only does he survive them, he thrives riding on them. How is that possible? Well, long and short, he trained his brain to use echolocation. So he clicks, just like a dolphin. He clicks and he bounces that sound off, and he is able to navigate through these very challenging trails. So that is one lesson that I want you to take from this, is that you can train your brain to do just about anything you want to accomplish. The brain is malleable. The brain, I tell people all the time, your brain, your neurons, your brain listens to what you are thinking in your mind. So you have to be careful what you're telling it. If you tell yourself you can, you will. If you tell yourself you can't, you won't. And that is the biggest point of this story with Daniel Kish. I read an interview that a journalist did with his mother. And he said to his mother, "What were you thinking? What did you think when he wanted to ride a bike for the first time?" Because she bought him his first bike when he was around 5 years old. And she told about the story of how he would climb the trees and climb the bookcases, and he was always climbing on things. And the journalist, just in shock, was like, "What were you thinking? Why did you do this? Weren't you afraid he was going to kill himself?" And his mother said to the interviewer, "I knew if I told him that he couldn't do it, he would never try. So I am here to tell you, you can do it. And I want you to try. I've explained to you different parts, and I apologize for the interruption, but I've explained to you different parts of this amazing gift that you possess, your brain. I want you to come intimately connected to your natural gifts so that you can thrive in any endeavor beyond the hackathon. You will come up with amazing ideas in the next couple days. I want you to embrace them. I want you to just imagine huge. And I want you to take that same attitude and move forward into every challenge you have in your life from this point on. You have natural gifts, discover what they are, own them, and live in them. Okay? I want to finish with just a couple of thoughts, really quick thoughts. We're going to skip this brain game. Couple of tips as you go through the next couple of days. If you get into a point where you've got you and your group, you've got some problems, you can't get past this, you can't think, I want you to stop. I want you to stand up, and I want you to move. That's going to activate the brain going from a sitting to a standing position. That's why I always give my presentations when I'm standing, even if it's virtual. It will increase the oxygen level to your brain by 10 to 15%. So move. Take a break, get up and move. Hydrate. You've got to keep something to drink close to you at all times. If you are a bunch of purple imagination bubbles, you're going to get so into this process that you're going to forget what time it is. Because remember, time is tracked in the opposite portion of the brain. When you forget what time it is, you forget to drink, you forget to move. And just a 2% drop in body water in your hydration is going to trigger fuzzy short-term memory, problems focusing on the computer screen, all kinds of different things. So you're going to need to keep your brain hydrated to get through these next couple of days. Do a lot of mind mapping. Think outside of the box. Don't do things traditionally. This is not about tradition. Fixing problems is never about tradition. You can bring great ideas from the past, but you have to merge them by thinking out of the box. Do things like mind mapping. Put notes and papers all over the place. Use your imagination. That's your gift. Take those brain breaks. Do the games like what I did. Every 30 minutes, every 45 minutes break, do something fun. It's going to allow your subconscious, while you're doing something fun out here, you're doing a brain break, it's going to allow your subconscious to continue to work on the problem even when you're not cognitively thinking about it. It's one of the amazing, amazing things about the brain. Okay? I hope this has given you something strong to think about. I hope that you are embracing this. Creativity is just intelligence having fun, according to Albert Einstein. And I want you to think about the impossible, because when you think about the impossible, you go for the impossible, you make way for the incredible. All right? Okay. Let's leave it at that. Are we good? Do I need to stop sharing the screen?
Yes, thank you. I took over the screen already.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Cool.
But we still have 5 minutes or so just to warm up, everyone.
Okay.
And I do have to set up the live stream link. So give me those 5 minutes. Okay.
While we have that, does anybody have any questions that they want to? I can open up now that I'm not sharing the screen. I can open up a chat.
Yes. Chat is yours. Ask questions. You can socialize a little bit. Andrea, you are the boss now.
No, Julie, this was terrific. I think you really helped us to kind of get focused for what's coming next and start to identify our strengths. And I also identify how the other people who, connect to have a different dominant part of the brain than we do really we can work with them, tips and tricks for working with them, appreciating them, and bringing them into the fold as we form teams later on and start to maximize